Hello, I'm Damien Humphreys,
I'm Luke Hindmarsh.
and we are,
In Deep Crit.
and it's good to be back with you again. This morning we are in Deep Crit looking at Tales from the Loop, ta-da ta-da, which there is a starter set for, which comes with basic rules, some pre-made characters, some dice, some maps, very nice little set there, and the core rule book, and as you can see it says, role-playing in the 80s that never was.
How does it
This is
smell, the book?
Smells divine. This
Excellent.
is from Free League Publishing, who also published the Alien, the role-playing game that we've reviewed previously, which allegedly also smells very nice. I've not smelt a physical copy of that book, but
It has the smell of
there's
fear, whereas I'm hoping that Tales from the Loop doesn't. Tales from the Loop presumably smells like the set of E.T.
yeah, it smells of candy in childhood.
Yeah.
So yes, this is a game. First of all, little caveat on pronunciation. It's written by a Swedish company, and the main setting is in Sweden. I am not Swedish. I do not speak Swedish. My pronunciation of Swedish words is going to be awful. So I hereby formally apologise to the entire nation of Sweden and any Swedes who may be watching this video. Anyone from that part of the world who's just going to cringe when I try and say these words.
And I've got no excuse because I live in Denmark, so should possibly be able to pronounce it, but I can just about do Danish.
I could
I'm
just
sorry.
about do English sometimes. So.
I don't claim to be able to do English; too difficult. But so my apologies too. Yeah, I'm
So
not
this
going
is
to either.
so the game is based around the artwork of Simon Stollenhag, I believe it's pronounced, possibly, who has
Apologies.
done loads of fabulous artwork on this kind of nostalgic 80s childhood where there's fantastic things floating through the sky, fantastic robots, all kinds of strange things going on, really atmospheric pictures that he's produced. There obviously is a TV show that's been produced based on the same pictures, but I don't think the two are particularly connected, as in the game's not connected to the TV show. So the TV show's set in its own particular world with the loop in it. It's not set in the same setting.
Oh, interesting. So I've avoided watching the TV shows because we were playtesting and I'm a player, so I didn't want to. It probably wouldn't have tainted in anyway. Maybe I should watch it.
No, I don't think it would. But it does give the atmosphere quite well. So we are in a 1980s that never was, as it says. So the core setting is in Sweden, just outside of Stockholm, a group of islands, the Malaren Islands. Probably pronounced that completely wrong as well. Just take it as read. I've apologised for all my pronunciation. And this is a world where things are different to how they were in our world of the 80s. And anybody who's watching who's of a certain age, of the same age as Luke and I, who grew up, in the 80s. I was born mid-70s. A large part of my childhood was the 80s. Things are the same. There's a lot of the same influences, but things are also different. So, as it says in the book, in the 1950s, something called the magnetrine effect was discovered, which allows these big Gauss ships to sail across the skies in the northern hemisphere. Doesn't work in the southern hemisphere as well. That's not explained why, but it's something to do with the Earth's magnetic field. So a lot of heavy freight is carried on these massive ships that float through the sky. A Japanese company has perfected what they call self-balancing machines, which are essentially robots. So robots are quite ubiquitous, crop up all over the place, are used in industry, are used in civil ways, are used by the military, although that's being phased out. There's kind of loads of little bits of history in there, but the military application is being phased out because of an incident, which, we can only kind of guess at what that was. And then also in the 50s, the world's first particle accelerator is built in Boulder City in Utah, which is kind of the alternate setting that they provide in the book. And then some 10 years or so later, a sister accelerator is built in Sweden, a bigger one. So it's the world's largest particle accelerator, consisting of 3 huge underground rings of particle accelerators, known colloquially as the Loop. And everyone who lives in this part of Sweden knows that the Loop's there. A lot of the adults are employed by the Loop. A lot of the industry is around the Loop, and a lot of strange things happen because of the Loop. So you've got this 80s of, all the influences of all the movies, E.T., The Goonies, The Breakfast Club, all that kind of stuff. All the music, Michael Jackson, Madonna, Slayer, Metallica, all these various influences coming in. But you've also got robots.
Don't forget Tiffany.
Oh, let's try and not forget Tiffany. I think I'm a clone now.
Sorry.
You've got these huge magnetron ships sailing across the sky. You've got robots carrying out day-to-day tasks. You've got this kind of weird technology pervading everyday life. Which, for the people of the time, is completely normal, right? So it's an interesting way of being in a kind of pseudo sci-fi world, but it's not sci-fi because it's completely normal for the people of that world.
It's alternate history, isn't it? I suppose, which is, some people will try to say alternate history is not science fiction, and I'm afraid I don't agree with that. I think it clearly is well and truly in the wheelhouse of the overarching umbrella of speculative fiction. But the sci-fi elements, they feel quite grounded, apart from the flying cargo ships. But it doesn't feel. It's got that 80s feel to it still. So it's not quite like the 80s view of the future that we might see in Blade Runner. It doesn't have that kind of step up into the way I remember. I was only little in the 80s, but I remember being believing that the future would turn into this sort of 2 a.m. and raining reality. Which obviously for me personally it has done. I mean, it doesn't that sort of sci-fi setting isn't what this feels like. It feels like you're in the 80s, I think.
I think so, and I hope that's come across in the way when I run this. This is a preliminary review. We've played 2 sessions, so we've done character generation and played 2 sessions, 2 mysteries as they're called, which are designed to be wrapped up in a session or so. Out of the core mysteries that are in the book, which take place over a whole year. There's 3 mysteries that are single session ones, and then a larger one at the end. So we hope to have another 3 sessions, maybe 4, but probably another 3 sessions of this left to run, and then we will give another review on the kind of the way the stories have developed, I suppose, and on the campaign mystery side of things.
I suppose we could also look at, so we're doing it on Roll20, not to pump them up, but it's on a virtual tabletop, and it might be worth including in the second full review the things we don't cover, plus talking about our experiences of the product on the virtual tabletop. I mean, maybe we might have to do a separate video. We'll see how long it gets. But
absolutely. So the setup for the game, you're in Sweden, kind of on these islands, which is kind of suburban. You're just outside Stockholm. Stockholm's not that far away, but you're cut off enough to not be in the city centre. There's a few larger towns on the islands. Every player plays the part of a kid, and kids are aged between 10 and 15. As soon as a kid reaches 16, for the purposes of the game, they're no longer a kid, so that character is retired. And that's one of the mechanics we're looking into. Luke is playing an older kid, a 15-year-old kid who is going to be aged out before we play the last mystery. So he'll then generate another character. The kids are based on these archetypes. So you have the bookworm, the computer geek, the hick, the jock, the popular kid, the rocker, and the troublemaker, and the weirdo are the archetypes that you can choose from. It's suggested in the book to not have more than one of the same archetype, and I can see really good reasons for that.
Yeah, that would feel
because,
weird if our group had. So what we've got, the four of us as
yeah,
players at the moment, and I think the dynamic of having the different archetypes works very well. Um,
yes. So the archetypes we have in the game that I'm running at the moment are a computer geek, a hick, a rocker, and a weirdo.
I could have played at least two
Interestingly,
of those.
interestingly, nobody chose. Indeed, interestingly, nobody chose like the popular kid or the jock or the bookworm. But I think it's a good dynamic group, right? It's a nice group. Interestingly, I think that everybody's lent into the strengths of each of the archetypes. So, for for example, the computer geek, and we'll come on to skills and abilities in a little while. But so each archetype has key skills. So for the computer geek, there are calculate, program, and comprehend. And then you choose an iconic item, um, which can be just a little item. So the suggestions for the computer geek are a computer, a pocket calculator, a toy lightsaber. Each kid chooses a problem, such as parents always arguing or being beaten up at school, that kind of thing. A drive, so what is it they're trying to achieve in the world? Do they like solving puzzles? Do they want to learn about everything? Do they just want to play a face melting solo and rock the world out? Like that kind of thing. They also choose a pride. So the thing that kind of keeps them going when stuff gets tough, and these have mechanics within the game, which we'll come to later on. Relationship to other kids, relationships to NPCs, and choosing an anchor, a safe adult, essentially to go to when certain conditions are checked on the character sheet, or you're feeling upset or scared. So on.
I think it's worth saying that those are specific mechanics, which we'll get into in a little more detail in a moment. But so having an anchoring adult who, in my case, was not my character's father, for reasons we probably won't put on screen. But I based my dad on a part of a Guns N' Roses song because I'm a rocker, and I thought that was quite fun to do. But the anchoring adult for me was the club owner of the local sort of rock club, and the purpose of him mechanically is for the sort of healing, if you like. Although injury in this, so this is an interesting thing, is that with these archetypes, none of them are. I don't think they translate over to sort of classical role-playing archetypes in the standard way. So, you might have the IT geek, but they're not like a wizard. It's not, you know what I mean. It's not. It doesn't have that feel to it. It feels more organic, but it does feel. I think you referenced the Breakfast Club as like this was. What was it you saying about that being an expanded?
It's like an expanded set of archetypes that they talk about in the Breakfast Club. Especially at the end in the essay that Brian writes at the end of the Breakfast Club. The jock, the princess, the weirdo, the bully, and the nerd. The brain, as he refers to himself as. Yeah, so I think they fit really well into those kid archetypes, and I guess there's references to other films of the time, so Heathers maybe, and films maybe a bit later.
Implied, but it's not really at the age. So Heathers is older teens, isn't it?
Heathers is yeah.
There isn't that level of violence, is there really?
No, but it's that kind of high school movie. These are the groups of people. That where these kids fit in the social strata of life. Coming on to attributes, there are 4 main attributes in the game, which are body, tech, heart, and mind. Fairly self-explanatory. Body is obviously your physical prowess. Tech is the ability to understand machines, build things, open locked doors, etc. Heart is your ability to make friends and lie, know the right people, create a good atmosphere, persuade, or perhaps even deceive others. And mind is the ability to find weak points, understand people's situations, solve riddles. So they're fairly basic, broad categories, but they work pretty well, I think.
It's interesting. They still have a slight overlap. So like I think mind is used for empathize, the skill, which we'll come to in a second. But that
Yeah.
I might have instantly thought of heart as the appropriate attribute for that. But I can certainly see the logic of having mind as what drives it.
Yeah. As being able to understand that person.
Yeah, as opposed to just going with your feelings about it. You're actually thinking about what they must be feeling.
So so you start off with a number of attribute points equal to your age. So obviously, if you're playing a 15-year-old kid, you get 15 points. If you're playing a 10-year-old kid, you get 10 points, and they can be divided between those 4 attributes from a range of 1 to 5. So you can't have 0 in anything, and you can't go above 5 in anything. Then you have a number of luck points, which is equal to 15 minus your age. So obviously, if you're a 15-year-old, you don't get any luck points. A 10-year-old gets 5 luck points. Luck points are used throughout mysteries you can spend 1 to have an automatic success. You can, or for a reroll, or sometimes an automatic success. It makes the younger kids less skilled, but more flexible.
Yeah, I think it's interesting with
less sturdy.
The attributes is just, and it might just be worth from a mechanical perspective to make it very clear that each of those basically represents a die that you're going to roll. So if you've got 5 in an attribute, any connected skill with that will be your skill level plus 5 dice from your attribute, or 3 dice, or 2, and then anyway.
Yeah, and to achieve most tasks, you need a success on one of the dice that you roll, which is a 6. So you need to roll 1 6 to get a success. Quite similar to the alien system. Well, almost exactly the same as the alien
It's
system.
exactly the same, except that there's no. So with alien, there's a secondary set of dice, the stress dice, which have 1 being relevant. That isn't present here, but it is indeed based off the D6, which makes it very accessible.
Yeah, really accessible. You don't have to go and buy any special dice. Although, if you're watching this channel, you've probably got plenty of dice. If you're anything like me. No, I don't need any more dice, said no role player ever.
But these are pretty. These ones are specially made for this game. Ooh.
Exactly.
Yes.
And then, so next part of character generation is your skills. And you have 3 skills attached to each of those attributes. So for body, the skills are sneak, force, and move. For tech, they are tinker, program, and calculate. Heart is contact, charm, and lead. Mind is investigate, comprehend, and empathise. And essentially, within conversation with the games master, you will decide which one to roll. You have 10 points to spend to distribute amongst those skills at character generation. So, for example, if you want a strong character, you could put 5 points into your body attribute, and you could you can only go up to 3 in your key skills.
Character creation wise, yeah.
In character creation, everything else has to be at 1. So you've got those 3 key skills, but you can put 3 points into force if you're the bully. So you could have 8 dice to roll for force, which gives you quite a good chance of success. There's actually a table in the book which shows you the chances of success depending on the number of dice that you're rolling. I can't do that maths, I'm afraid. They're all pretty straightforward. A tinker roll to build and manipulate machines, and if you get a success, you get a success. The only one that's different is lead.
Yes.
Which your character has.
Yeah, so I hadn't entirely envisaged I hadn't designed the character with being the leader in mind, but then actually playing a rocker kid, your heart or the associated skills are key to that, unsurprisingly. And so I had then thought, well, I'm 15, it probably makes sense. I'm the eldest. So I took some points in lead and have used it. And it's an interesting one because it doesn't come without a consequence. It's got more consequences, I think, than any of the other skill.
Yeah.
Because if you succeed, you don't make an action happen, but what you do is whenever one of your other kids in the group will do what you have suggested to them, they get to take a bonus die. So if you have rolled a single success, they get there are 2 bonus die that you get to give out to the other kids if they do as they're told, sort of thing. You don't. This is more collegiate, so it's obviously suggested. The downside is that if you try and use lead and you're unsuccessful, you have to describe how the relationship with the other kids is fractured in some way by that attempt to assert control over them. And you take, I'm right in this, and you take one of the conditions.
You take a condition, yeah.
So it's always with it's encouraging that kind of necessary thing of, hey, you're going to have a character who may take the lead on something to be getting action going and helping everyone else. But at the same time, it does discourage. I think it can discourage excessive do as I say, which is good.
Yeah.
You don't want someone
exactly,
to be.
because...
This has got to be all moving and acting together rather than
for
party
sure,
leader type thing.
So then, as part of character generation, as I said, you then choose an iconic item, and this item gives you 2 bonus dice in a situation where it can be used to help you overcome what they call trouble with a capital T. So trouble is kind of encounters, as it were. It's a situation where you need to use a skill or set of skills to overcome. The example they give in the book is if you have a skateboard, you can add 2 dice to your move skill. But you can also, I guess, add 2 dice to your force skill if you were to pick it up and hit something with it. You know, it needs to make sense for how that item can be used to overcome that trouble. But each iconic item will give you a +2 bonus. Sorry, go on.
I was just going to say, so using the example in our group, the IT nerd had IT geek, to get it right, had a toy lightsaber because the player himself is a Star Wars fanatic, and so that turned out to be very useful when we needed light. So it was interesting that that didn't actually tie in directly to a dice roll at the time, I don't think, if I recall correctly.
No.
But it was then very useful as okay, so we don't have to worry about groping the dark because we've got him leading the way with the lightsaber. Sorry, go on. Problem.
Yeah.
Problem child.
So all kids have a problem, and you can either keep it to yourself or tell the other kids. It's part of everyday life. So the game's kind of split into scenes from everyday life, which are very kind of mundane and dealing with the parents and mowing the lawn and all this kind of stuff, and scenes from the mystery, from the kind of mystery that needs to be solved at the time. Mechanically, it kind of, the games master can use it to kind of heighten a scene or to kind of put a kid in trouble because of their problem. Something may come up that causes this problem to be prevalent, and if you struggle with your problem or overcome your problem within the game, that adds to the number of experience points you can have at the end of the game. The drive is the reason why you do this, and that's so I haven't had to use it yet, because I've got a group of players that are really engaged with the mysteries. But perhaps, if you present a mystery to a group and they're not interested, perhaps, that's where you can say, well, what's your drive? Here's a puzzle, and it says here that you love to solve puzzles. So this is why you're interested in this.
It's interesting that we haven't really had to use that, but we can get onto that. Reasons why later, I suppose.
Every kid has a pride, and you can use your pride to overcome a problem. You can use it once per mystery, or if you're playing a mystery that goes over more sessions, you can use it once per session, and that gives you an automatic success. Yeah. But it obviously has to tie in with the situation. You used it last session, right?
No, the first session. Last session, I think it was. The weirdo of our group's pride, I think, is in his ability to draw. Am I right? Or that's his iconic item. I'm not sure. I don't know enough about his character sheet to know. I don't know whether
that's his iconic item. Is his
all right? So I have used it in the first session. I used it. My pride is being able to play a face melting solo on guitar. So I used that to distract and impress. And I think I actually used some of that to do with talking a character around, not actually playing a solo, but being able to say to someone, get into a really in-depth musical conversation with them, which was only slightly role-played, although I could be quite nerdy about it if I wanted to. Could talk guitar all day. So that was cool as a distraction for the others to do something else, and that was quite fun to use that. This game very much, sorry, it's a tangent, but this encourages out of the box thinking, because these skills don't directly, and your iconic items, my iconic item was a guitar. It's not going to be necessarily useful in every situation, but there are surprising times when it can be used, not just to play music on. It doesn't have to be. I think we used the amp that's attached to it to detect a strange signal. Not that necessarily was the key mystery, but it was like, oh, this is beginning to give a hint towards a direction of what we should be doing, and that's the way the mysteries and the way you're using them and the way it encourages the players to use them. All these elements they're quite dynamic in play. They're very much opening role-playing possibilities, not limiting them, which I really like.
Yeah, absolutely. It's quite a simple system. The whole system in general is quite simple, not simplistic, rather than simple, I guess.
Feels like it covers everything you need for it.
You make these easy choices, which then can have much more dynamic influences further down the road, and it's about that conversation. But yeah, we'll come on to kind of the gameplay aspect shortly. Next thing you choose is your relationships to other kids and to some adults, and you choose your anchor. So an anchor is a person that you can go to if you suffer more than one condition. The conditions are upset, scared, exhausted, injured, and broken. A broken kid can no longer take part in the mystery. You know, they're kind of physically or emotionally or psychologically done for that mystery. Each other condition applies a cumulative -1 die modifier to any roll you make,
which can be quite significant.
And they don't necessarily have to go in order. So you don't go from upset to scared to exhausted to injured. It would depend on the outcome of that situation. So if you were to fail a roll to jump off a roof, then you would probably be injured from that. We had some swimming, didn't we?
Yeah, I got exhausted, I think.
Yeah, well, you got exhausted because there weren't enough successes within the group to go round.
But it was interesting. It wasn't directly, so I suppose there would have been a consequence. But it was, so you can take a condition to get a re-roll.
Yes.
And that's that initially, so I hadn't quite understood the mechanic in the first session, and I was like, oh, okay, well, I'll get up. This isn't working out the way I want it to, so I'm going to get upset about this. Great, I got a re-roll. Okay, cool, we've succeeded there. But I didn't realise it was making it harder and harder and harder to succeed. And so that cumulative effect does begin to mean that once you start making the choice to have a re-roll to have a success, of course, as a 15-year-old, I didn't have any luck points. So
so you can spend a luck point for a re-roll, or you can push the roll, which is take a condition and re-roll the dice. All of the dice, not just one or two, but all of the dice that you rolled. And so the conditions can build up.
Yeah.
And your anchor is somebody that you can go to spend some time. So you need to spend what they call a scene. So the game moves through scenes. So you spend a scene with that anchor. The example they give in the book is one of the players needs to heal their condition, so they go to their dad, who's their anchor, and they sit and they talk sports and chat about what's going on, and he heals his conditions. The group also chooses a hideout, which is a safe place. And when kids are in the hideout together, the games master can't put them in trouble. They could put themselves in trouble if they role-played a scene where trouble comes up, perhaps an argument amongst them or something else. But me as a games master can't put them in trouble there. It's their safe space. And if more than one kid is there, they can spend some time healing their conditions, as long as they're kind of engaging in some activity together, spending some time close together, talking, that kind of thing. And then there was the really nice bit to the end of Character Gen that I really liked, which is questions. And it gives you a suggestion of questions to ask. So there's some questions to ask directly to the kids. Some of them are quite mundane, like, what do your parents do for work? What do you think about school? Other ones are, what makes you angry? What's your experience with robots? What way has your problem gone from bad to worse lately? Those kind of things. And then there's a set of questions to the group. It suggests that you ask kind of 2 or 3 of those questions. So one of the ones I asked this group was, what is it you're not talking about?
Oh yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah. And it's kind of, it's the kids disappearing is what they're not talking about. What makes you laugh?
Yeah, and we've all got our own theories about why the kids are disappearing. So as the eldest, I've got the thing that there's some dude with a van driving around, and this is like creepy. So kids don't get talking to the younger ones, whereas they think it's something else, and that's interesting because I'm beginning to get the sort of more adult view of the world because I'm the eldest, because I'm 15, because I'm on my way out of this sort of precious time of fantasy and illusion, I suppose. I don't know. I mean, it does. Absolutely. So that I like that element as well. I thought it was very provocative for coming up with ideas about how to role play and who we are as characters. Yes,
indeed. And it's a bit. I guess as other games have a similar mechanic for your background, for choosing personality traits, that kind of thing. It's a bit similar to that.
Yeah.
Just it's a way into the role playing of the group. And this is a very roleplay heavy system.
It is, yes.
It's I'd say it's
possibly the
probably
most
90% roleplay.
I mean, we've rolled some dice because I think the reason why it's not just make believe is because there is the chaos. So we've got similar ideas about what the purpose of dice in any role-playing game is, and as my view is always they're the chaos element, they're the part of the storytelling where it's the reason why I think neither of us will fudge as when we GM. We're both anti-fudge.
Yeah.
Not that there's anything wrong with fudge as a substance. I'm talking about fudging dice rolls.
Oh, I can't stand fudge.
Can't you stand fudge?
For the record, can't stand fudge.
One for me. The fact is, the strange things you learn about your cousin doing YouTube videos. God, he doesn't like fudge. All right, next you'll be telling me you don't like toffee apples or whatever.
Oh no, I like toffee. Toffee's good. Fudge is bad.
All right,
I don't know why.
No, it doesn't matter. Anyway, so there we go. Yes, fudging dice rolls. So I don't think either of us are fans of that. We're not going into it in detail, but here, let's face it, you need to know whether or not the kid succeeds at something. They're going to try something crazy. Yeah, let's roll for it. Or this is, and that's what adds the element of risk and fear. And fear is the wrong word. So, as you said, I think you can't. You're not like, it's not like Alien where you're going to have something face hug you or rip your head off.
Yeah.
Or kids can get hurt and kids can get scared and kids can get tired and you can fail the mystery if you like. But
so kids cannot die. That's a core mechanic in the rules. That kids cannot die. Broken is the worst you can get, which just means you're out for the rest of the mystery.
I really expected that to rob the game of a lot of thrill.
Yeah.
Because I don't like to play if we're playing in a dungeon setting or on a spaceship or whatever. I don't want to feel safe. Funnily enough, the fact that my character can't die has nonetheless not robbed me of that feeling, because there are still consequences. The consequences don't have to be lethal for them to be
and it's
thrilling.
And so the couple of mysteries we've run so far, the consequences are kind of to other people, right? To the adults, and people can die as a consequence of the mysteries, just not the kids involved in it.
But not the kids.
So that kind of, and it puts I think it puts the players in the position of those kids, the kids from the Goonies, the kids from E.T., who have to solve this problem because they're the only ones who can, on behalf of the adults.
Because none of the adults want to believe. Yeah. Yes. Because the adults risk being, something happening to them. We can't really go into I can't say what might happen to them, but there's some unpleasant stuff can happen to the adults. And it's very interesting that it's turning it on its head that the kids are having to look after the adults. But, like, as you said, you referenced the Goonies. It's a real-world problem that's solved by if you haven't seen it, I'm sorry, I'm going to ruin the film for you. Solved by a pirate's treasure on a treasure. I mean, it's like, what? But that's why, Sorry, do you want to talk about the have we haven't gone into the details about
Yeah.
parents not
So
believing, adults never believing
so
kids?
the story the game is very narrative, and it's actually really player driven. And the job of the games master
Yeah.
is to set the scenes or ask if anybody wants a scene. And those scenes kind of alternate between everyday life, which is, like, as I said, very mundane, very boring. You've got to go to school, you've got to brush your teeth, you've got to mow the lawn, dog needs walking, parents are moaning about work. Maybe your problem comes in there, your parents are arguing, your parents have just split up.
Hiding from the
Yeah.
head teacher
Yeah.
in the toilets because you're smoking. That was mine. Smoking in the boys' room
You know,
had to be.
We've got two characters who are classmates, and so it was Thursday morning double maths. The computer geek loved it. The hick absolutely hated it. It was off. Yeah.
Copied his work.
And then you set scenes within the mystery, which is where you start to introduce this thing that's happening that isn't quite right, and it's not my job as games master to particularly narrate what's happening. It's to offer clues, I guess. Especially with everyday life, it's like I would say, "Who wants a scene?" And at the beginning of last session, I went through each group and was like, "Okay, this is your scene. Where are you this morning? What's going on for you today?" I'd say some people are better at that than others. Some people engage with that quicker than others. But it's a really nice mechanic that it's very much. I get to sit back actually and let the kids play.
Yeah. That really requires feel as a games master. So you were like, well, what are you doing this morning? Somebody stop me. I've got a chance to say what my character's doing. And I was just off with, trying to make it fit this whole thing of the kid with the single parent father who's off making movies of a certain sort. If you listen to the song My Michelle by Guns N' Roses, there's a line in it about Daddy works in now that Mummy's not around, and that's the line that inspired my character. So I'm just able to roll with that, and you have the touch as a GM to know when a player needs. I think you prompted me a couple of times about what about that element, but it's not. So that let me just be like, hey, I'm this is what I love to just get stuck in and just improvise what I want to say. But some of the other players, you gave them a nudge here and there, and having the feel as a GM as to how much you need to do that. I suspect over time playing this game, you would need to do that less and less and less overall. Although I will need times when you need to prompt me, because that's the nature of But that so that could be a sticking point. So from a terms of talk about some systems helping teach role playing. This perhaps is a point in this which that's a little skill for GM school.
I think the GM school and possibly player school as well.
Definitely player school.
The kind of if you want to learn the role playing side of role playing games, this is a really good system for that.
Yeah.
Because the story won't progress without
it.
It just won't. It'll be a group of people sat in an online meeting room or sat physically in a room going, well, we're not doing anything. But
yes, done badly, this could really not land.
Yeah.
If you don't engage with it, engage with it, and it's.
We will get onto that.
But we'll get onto that.
No,
Sorry,
absolutely. So you set the scene with these scenes from everyday life, and then essentially everybody ends up collecting at some point in the day at the hideout. Or another location. I just happen to have set the last couple beginning at the hideout. Or there could be another location where all the kids are together, and then you get to introduce the mystery. And the mysteries are really quite short. They are designed, most of them, to be played in a single session. So they say 3 to 4 hours. We did the first one in probably about 2.25 hours. And the second one was pretty much bang on 3 hours, I think. Wow.
Yeah, it was. I mean, we were 1 minute over the 3 hour time slot we were expecting. It's pretty cool.
So obviously the GM knows the truth of the mystery, but then has to introduce it to the kids as a mystery. You have various locations that are tied to that mystery, and so you. We'll do another video on kind of the mysteries and the the campaign
Yeah.
play. But you know, something's happening. The birds are talking, like actually talking. Is the setup for the first one that I ran, and then it's up to the kids to then decide how to investigate that. And my group actually jumped a couple of the locations because they didn't need it, because they did the right kind of investigating and the right kind of guesswork in some places, and leaps of imagination to understand what was going on. So yeah,
that was interesting. It was very freeform.
Yeah.
But that didn't cost. I didn't feel like that cost us anything.
No, and it's down to the kids to describe the world to a large extent as well. So you know, when you decided to go to the library, it's like, well, the public library is miles away. There's the school library, but it's summer. The school's closed. What does your school look like? You know, and then there was a conversation amongst the group about how it was this one-room schoolroom originally, which has been built onto and has kind of extra new buildings around and some porter cabins, and we got a real good sense of the school from a role-played conversation between the kids, between the players.
Yeah, it was interesting. And what's the and there's this ghost story about the old part of the building where there's the sound of something coming from the bell tower,
which then gave me the idea to say, you know, and on quiet nights, on quiet still nights, you can hear the school bell ringing, even though there's not been a bell in that bell tower for as long as anyone can remember. But you hear the school bell ringing, you know, so you can build on the mystery of the world, which isn't necessarily tied to the mystery that's going on, but just the eeriness of the world.
Exactly, yeah. It's got the setting, immersion and stuff. But so we also had like a character who was the janitor, and before, you know, didn't need to actually have the janitor arrive for him or her. It was him in this case, but to be a source of what if the janitor catches us? Because some of the kids got on with the janitor, but some of the troublemaker kids, not troublemaker archetype, but just ones who like get caught smoking in the boys' room and doing stuff. And so I had a chance to explain why the janitor did not like me. And so it was like, I cannot get caught by him, or there's some serious fallout. And then but it was that was all just off the cuff.
Yeah, and it becomes part of our world. Really nice. So in the future, you know, if something happens in the school, I can bring the janitor back into it, or perhaps the janitor turns up somewhere unexpected. You know, there's a new character that can crop up somewhere, which we already have a backstory for, and rumours about, and a personality for. So
it's the guy driving around in the van.
Maybe not.
That's what I read.
So the mystery progresses. It can either go linear, so from clue 1, clue 2, clue 3 to the showdown, or it can go clue 1, clue 3, clue 7, showdown. You know, it can, however the kids want to solve it is how the kids solve it. They can jump about from location to location and clue to clue, and maybe even don't need all the clues. But each clue, each location that has a clue should have some trouble to it. And that's not necessarily a fight or something, but something to overcome. Either an investigation role.
We've kind of not really... I suppose there's been one scene that was vaguely a fight in this. The rest, there's been bits where we've like broken something, but it doesn't have that roll for initiative thing at all at any stage. But the tension levels have amped up. Okay, I credit you with obviously that you're running it, you're the gym, and probably us as a group interacting with it as if it's reality has helped. But the very fact that you're able to do that and we're able to be immersed does say something.
Oh, it does.
Positive about the system.
Yeah, absolutely, it does.
To keep bearing in mind the length of the video, I don't know whether we want to just very quickly talk about quick experiences of the effect on the role playing of. So I'm thinking one of the issues we mentioned is that adults won't believe you, and we had a nice little scene with one of the players who, if he's watching it, no offense to him, it is less a fan of role playing and likes the tactical combat side of things a little bit more, but is definitely we did Blades in the Dark and he was very much coming out of that into role playing really nicely. And there was what I regard as a really brilliant scene where you had him interacting with his dad, telling him all this crazy stuff that happened and how that wasn't believed, but oh right, that's nice, son, sort of thing, and how earnest he was in telling his. And it was like, part of me was like, dude, do you remember that this is not real? But it was so good.
And that's a real joy for me. I'm sure he's probably watching this video. He better be, or there'll be trouble. But he'd be the first to admit that he comes from a tactical background rather than a role-playing background, and he has found role-playing difficult. But not in this game. Like, he's really come out. There's another player who has said before we started, was kind of adamant that they weren't going to like it, and has actually said they really like it. It's so. So it's kind of we were saying there's like a meta step in this game, isn't there? Because you're almost playing kids playing at something. It's getting yourself into possibly,
yeah. You talked about I was looking at this as isn't the frustration of this that in all those films like E.T. or in Stranger Things, in the Goonies, the parents are kind of disbelieving, which is an experience in childhood. You've got all this thing happening in you and your parents just aren't listening. They just don't listen. Why don't those adults listen? And then they break through. The resolution often is in those films and in some books that are linked to that kind of film, that the resolution is the parents are then like, you've been telling us, we now appreciate it. And that is not present in this by a rule that says the adults will not believe you.
Full stop, yeah.
Full stop. And you and I was a little bit like, I thought that was a negative. And your take on it sort of for me.
Yeah,
so do you want to give your take? Now I've explained my position.
No, absolutely. But for me as a kid, outplaying those games, those games were absolutely real. And I could go back and tell my parents, today we were doing such and such, and I was the lord of a castle fighting off this horde. For kids, that is absolutely real, but it's not actually real. So maybe these things. A question of the game is: do these things actually happen? Do they not happen? So there's this kind of meta element to it, not meta gaming, but meta physical element to the game, I think.
You're sort of, is it how many infinite regression? Is it like, it's like having a mirror looking into a mirror. Are you role playing in a game with kids imagining they're doing something, and the next thing we need to do is have the kids play Dungeons and Dragons or something, and then be like, God, it's a loop. We're going to pop out of reality.
So what's it like role playing a kid in the 80s?
I did not expect to. So I didn't think I wouldn't like it, but I didn't think it would tick many boxes for me. I thought this was going to be a bit of a chore. So we haven't mentioned, we were very lucky. Free League has sent us these products after we reached out to them when we were reviewing Alien, and they, which I had bought with my own money, thank you very much. But they said, you can use the artwork for your video, which is really kind of them. Not knocking anyone who hasn't done it, but I have reached out to other publishers who are, let's just say, we're a small channel, we're new, we can do this because we love it. But when someone's taking the effort to praise your system or to review it thoroughly, it's kind of nice when a publisher will take an email from you and say, sure, use our art, here's a link, and you have permission to just do it, as opposed to us using sort of like the fair usage rules to do so. Free League has been very good on that, and they've sent us a copy of this. Nonetheless, if I didn't like this, I would tell you it wasn't for me. And I'm sorry to say, I was expecting, there's a reason why they sent it to you and not to me. You wanted it, you thought you quite liked to run this. I was thinking, well, I quite like the artwork, but this does not sound like my kind of game. I'm all like gritty, like adult themed. I don't mean adult themed, I mean adult themed, like the dark side of sort of, the cyberpunk universe or Alien, or some really dark and grim fantasy role playing is more my scene. And yet, this is brilliant.
Yeah.
I haven't role played like this in another system. As I think about it,
that's quite a statement.
So the closest I would say I've come is possibly in a game called Aegon, which is a bit like Blades in the Dark, which we reviewed, where I was a particular Greek hero, and that was interesting. That encouraged a lot of it. This goes a slight step more to creating the world collaboratively, and I wouldn't have said that was possible. I don't know. I think maybe it taps into the fact that I have been a teenager.
Yeah, possibly. It'll be interesting to see how people of different ages would feel this game would go. Obviously, I have a nostalgia for the 80s. You know, it was my.
So I was born in 81, which dates me. Means I wasn't a teenager in the 80s, but I have enough of a feel, and I remember you. You know, not just taking me to the Care Bears movie. I remember being jealous that you went to see Willow and I wasn't allowed to go.
So I went from 6 to 16 through the 80s. You know, so this was very much my era.
0 to 9 for me, but So, but I mean, nonetheless, I've engaged in it fully, and it touches all those the 80s were a cool era. I probably feel more for them than I do the 90s, which was mine. I mean, in terms of an era.
Okay.
Not that I would say that they were better, but I think it's more evocative. There seems to be a bigger stamp, a bigger difference from now, in my mind.
I guess we have to be careful about the length of this video again. I'm
sorry.
So from my point of view, I'm really touched and really pleased by the way the group has engaged with this game. You know, we've got, after just kind of 2 real sessions of playing, we've done 2.5 sessions, I guess, all in all, with character gen. But we've got this real little group that has its own, each character has their own idiosyncrasies, but they have these relationships which are really deep and really meaningful quite quickly. I don't know if in other systems you would develop those relationships as quickly, necessarily. You know, just the little things like the way you've given nicknames to all the other characters, because that's kind of part of your character. And you've given yourself a nickname, which none of them use.
Because he thinks he's cool.
Yeah.
Well, because I think I'm cool, and I'm really obviously not.
And just little things with, you know, one of the characters, is their iconic item is their dog, it's their pet corgi. But there's interactions between other characters with that dog as well, so it becomes, almost this, like, I don't know, Outcast Famous Five kind of vibe to it.
It's. So I'm thinking. I mean, as I say, I've made this rather bold statement about this and as a system. So I'm not meaning. There are other games where I've involved myself and I have been the character. Like, I mean, I'm currently a character. Last night with Curse of Strahd, I was trying to be the character. You've been running some role-playing systems for me where I have been the character as far as I was concerned whilst we were playing. I've played a Cyberpunk 2020/Red game where I am this particular crazy Scottish cyberpunk netrunner who I've totally put on the identity of. But it didn't happen in 2 sessions, I don't think. I mean, it came quickly, and it does. But in 30 years, in terms of a system that makes me role play, this one, I think, pushes that much faster and more easily. It was like everything else is going down a slide. This is someone having greased that slide well and truly. I don't know if that makes any sense. My apologies.
We've discussed this morning. You know, it's kind of like role play school. You know, for the role playing side of RPGs, I think this is a really good system for teaching it without forcing it. You know, just introducing it as this is the crux of the game. This is the core part of the game.
It's not. Yes. So, I'm not sure how much benefit you get if this was the first ever role-playing game you ever played. I don't know, but if you've been playing for 10 years and you think you know how to role-play, You pick up Tales from the Loop and you'll learn something. I've been playing for 30 years. You've been playing for longer. We will not go into that. But got to be careful because something can happen to my kid tomorrow.
Let's just say Vecna was a young man when I
the
started.
fact is both. So we've been playing a long time, and I don't know whether you feel that you've learned something new about GMing.
Oh, absolutely.
But the fact that you can say that,
like a more hands-off kind of approach. I don't have to dictate every scene. I don't have to, and I'm not a railroady GM.
No, you're not. You're not at all. We've been playing D&D together with you running it, and that's not necessarily my natural system. You run it, and I felt very free.
So I felt after our first session. So we play our sessions on a Friday morning, and then I run my Icewind Dale game on a Saturday evening. And I felt after our first session, that next Icewind Dale, I was a bit more relaxed about. So it's going to be interesting to see.
Funny.
By this weekend, now we've had 3 sessions.
Yeah.
How Icewind Dale is going to be this weekend in my approach to. Yeah, just letting the characters do a bit more, letting the players do a bit more. And I think that's always a useful lesson for a role-playing game. It's not my game.
It could be a case of the more different systems you play, the more that brings out different elements. And I'm a strong proponent of the idea of if you play only one role-playing system, you don't know much about role-playing. I don't mean that to be negative, it's just that there's so much variety out there that indulge and try, and that's kind of what we do with this. The joy of this channel is I'm playing games I haven't played for years. I'm playing games I wouldn't have otherwise picked up. I must say, I probably wouldn't have picked up Tales from the Loop. I like the artwork, but it didn't. But you may not like this. I went into it thinking I was wrong. One of my old school buddies I used to do AD&D with is playing. He didn't expect to like it one bit and was only playing to humour us.
Yeah.
I mean, it's true. He probably wouldn't say that directly to you. But I know that he was only playing to humour us, to help us with this channel. And what did he say to you? He's the kind of person who wouldn't have said it.
So he's really enjoying it, really liking the role-playing side and the freedom to play a kid and to make believe. Our friend that we've already mentioned, who's not hot, that into the role-playing side. Before we started, that hasn't been his driving force. I said to him, "You really may not like this game," and he's thoroughly enjoying it. So I guess this kind of brings us on to a preliminary verdict on the game and the system. If I'm talking about just my experience, this is the crit. I think the mechanics are really well done, really simplistic and well put together. I think the setting is fantastic. I think the ease of use is wonderful, and the book smells amazing. And
they sent it to us, so we're going to have to bump it up. No. I see. Actually, that's interesting.
Is this for everybody? This is the question I asked. The same with Blades in the Dark. Is this for everybody? Is this a game that I will play every week for a year? I think the answer to those questions are no.
No, probably not. Could everyone get something out of this?
Yeah.
Only if they committed to actually trying to play it. So if we all just sit around not engaging with this, it isn't going to make it happen. I don't think it's for everyone, but I think everyone should try it. I've had a blast so far. I've learnt something. I can't not rate it the crit, because of course they're also sending us products. That actually would be a reason for me to downvote and be harder on it. So I actually want to look for a reason why I can say it's only good crit, so that no one thinks that being sent a book makes us review it better. But actually, okay, if you're only interested in combat, you're not going to like this. But if there's any hint of you that has watched E.T., those films, The Goonies, The Breakfast Club, any part of that resonates with you at all, I think you would probably love this. And if you're an intermediate role player, maybe not a first-time role player, but a beginner, all the way up to you're an advanced role player. If you maybe see it as a challenge, whether you could learn something.
I bet you could. Absolutely, I bet you could.
So I have to say,
yeah.
my preliminary is the crit, and if it's not for you, well, then you can disagree.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that is our verdict so far. This is the crit. This is the preliminary verdict. We've got some more sessions to play, and we may change that verdict.
Yeah, they might have hidden a mechanic we didn't know that screwed up for us. Would be looking hard.
So this is our first. I was going to say short review. It's not been a short review at all, but this is our first in-depth look into Tales from the Loop from Free League Publishing. Going through the mechanics and our preliminary thoughts on how we feel about the game. If you've played it and have different thoughts, please get in touch. If it's something you'd really like to play, leave a comment below. If you're inspired to pick it up from this video and give it a go, come back and let us know what you thought. I'll be right. Have we been fair? Have we been too fair? Are we blinded by nostalgia for the 80s?
Yeah. Have we convinced you that we've been bought off? Is this only for people who've lived through the 80s? Are we just old men?
Then there's Things from the Flood, which is also by Free League, which is set in the 90s.
Yep.
So.
Okay. We'd listen to Oasis and Blur instead of.
Listen to Blur.
Well, no, I wouldn't.
Listen to Blur and Nirvana. Give Oasis a miss.
Well, we're not getting to that. Hang on. We're having a long conversation. But so if there's anything so this is a longer video, and since it's a longer video, it doesn't cost me anything to say. Is it too long? Do you want to have a comment about that? Also, there's another game I've heard of. I don't know if you've heard of, called Kids on Bikes, which might be quite similar to this. Neither of us have played it. We probably will, particularly if they send us a copy. But I mean, we probably would invest anyway, when paychecks come through and that kind of thing. If you've played that, does that sound like this? If you've played both, is it worth us having a look at that? Because I probably wasn't that enthused by the prospect of playing Kids on Bikes, but is it going to be similar to Tales from the Loop? We probably ought to review this at some point because there is some similarity. But all I can say is that it would have to be bloody good
to improve on this. Yeah.
to come up to I struggle to, off the top of my head, I can almost always come up with a way I would improve a system. Right now, the only thing I would say they need to improve about Tales from the Loop is your pronunciation of the Swedish nice names.
The next campaign I run, I'm going to set in English. Don't worry.
Yeah. Okay. One of our players is very, very brave, getting up or staying up very late in the US to come in and play this with us. So that's props to him for being committed. But that's us signing out for now.